TV party tonight!
Oh, we got nothing better to do than watch TV and have a couple of brews.
Don't want to talk about anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes, to our favorite shows!
Oh, my circuits!
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary dog!
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama!
Good evening, Radulich and Broadcasting Network faithful. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And this is TV Party Tonight, where our favorite show tonight is the 2019 iteration of Swamp Thing, brought to you by the good people from DC Universe, Big Shoe Productions, Atomic Monsters Productions, DC Entertainment, and Warner Brothers Television. Joining me tonight down in the bayou is a good friend, Jesse Starcher. Jesse, how fucking perfect was that intro?
That was fucking-tacular. Let me tell you something, Mark. I regret to inform you that TV Party Tonight has been canceled due to budgetary issues.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, no.
We have made an accounting error, sir. Apparently, you have not paid me the $0 you owe me.
The check's in the mail. Would I lie to you? What Jesse is, of course, referring to, and I'm just going to read right from the wiki here. On April 17, 2019, it was announced that the production for this series had been unexpectedly cut short due to creative differences with DC Universe's parent company, Warner Media, thus reducing the original episode order from 13 to 10. Further reports stated that the series had been canceled due to budget shortfalls after the expected level of tax rebates offered by the state of North Kakalaki. I bet Ric Flair ran off with all the money.
Dropped an elbow on it, picked it up, and ran.
That's right. He punched out a Warner Brothers executive, fucking gave him the figure four. Charlotte grabbed the bag, and they headed for the car and drove out of there.
Nut shot at one of the... It was crazy.
David Flair hit somebody with a kendo stick. It was awful.
Oh, wow. No, he was going to show up.
Yeah. Were substantially reduced. A representative from DC Universe stated that the streaming service is being reevaluated and there are no plans for Season 2. When asked why specifically the show was canceled, despite the finale introducing the full-on Floronic Man...
Yep.
The spokesperson responded, "Unfortunately, we are not in a position to answer that at this time." And then a gunshot was heard. I think I added that part.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more here, but that was basically the story of what happened to this thing and why it was only canceled for one season. Because apparently it got very good reviews from the critics. I don't know how we don't have access to the DC Universe's numbers as far as how many people watched it, but near as I can tell, it was a pretty well lauded series. I thought we're going to break it down and talk about it, but I thought it was very good. And I'm not the hugest fan of Swamp Thing. You can check out our source material podcast on the Alan Moore Swamp Thing to hear all about that. What does Alan Moore think, Jesse?
Oh, it's fucking unbelievable that they would fucking cancel my fucking show. Somebody call give me a number. I want to talk to somebody about it.
I understand he said fucking Blue Devil. You put Blue Devil in my fucking show?
Oh, man. I want to...
Ian Ziering, that fucking guy from Beverly Hills 90210? Fucking Ian Ziering, the Sharknado guy? Fuck this guy.
Wait a second. We got to do the obligatory, and the women were all whores.
Everybody on the show's a whore. Crystal Reed, you whore from Gotham. I don't know if you remember her or not. She played the famous mob boss on that show. Gosh,
Sophia Falcone.
Yeah, she played the Falcone daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I knew she looked familiar.
Never watched an episode of that, but I did recognize her. It must have been from a promo or something, and saw that she was part of Gotham. Anyway, interesting. You've watched all that. I never did.
Yeah, I suffered through the many seasons of the hot garbage that was Gotham. That's why we never talked about it. I'm like, I can't even bring myself to discuss this. It's just going to be me ranting for an hour. That, and I don't think anybody else I knew watched it. that was willing to come on here and talk about it. All right, but so we're not here to talk about how shitty a show Gotham was, nor are we here to do Alan Moore impressions, though these are a few of my favorite things. We're here to talk about Swamp Thing. Jesse, for those that didn't listen to the Source Material podcast, how well did you know Swamp Thing going into the show? Did you have any expectations? Was it just like, well, Mark's making me watch this shit, so I guess, I gotta, but I really had nothing else that brought you to the series. What was your experience?
Yeah, I was not somebody that read a lot of Swamp Thing. I knew who Swamp Thing was. I didn't get into the comics. I have always heard the Alan Moore comics were really, they were just, everybody that talked about them was like, you've got to read them. So up until our source material discussion, I had never read those comics. I remember watching the movie, the 1982?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know you guys are going to be talking about that here later this week.
Yes,
I remember watching
with Andrea Barbubi.
That's right. And so I remember watching that movie. I've watched it a couple times when I was a kid. I had no idea the depths of the character, especially when Alan Moore took over the character and what he did with him, which is represented almost, fairly well, I'll say, in this series. There are definitely elements of it. So now, as for wanting to watch this series, I had heard a lot of people say that it was really good. There were people that had access to the DC app. Sorry, my son yelled and screamed upstairs. He sounds like he fell out of his bed, and it's kind of crazy since his bed's only 1 foot off the floor now since I took the bunk bed down. So I don't know how in the world.
We're back. We had to take a pause for the cause to make sure one of Jesse's sons hadn't broke his fucking neck trying to go to the bathroom. Jesse, can you give us a ground report?
Everything is fine. I came upstairs and Caleb said, "I'm sorry I scared you, Dad. When I got out of bed, I tripped over Colton." Okay, all right. As long as nobody's bleeding, we're back and we're good to go. So, yeah, I had heard a lot of good things about the series. Have not had the inclination of going and watching this show until I heard the good reviews. And then, of course, you said, hey, we want to cover it. I was like, all right, I'm down. Let's watch it and let's see what we get.
All right. For myself, I'm not a huge fan of the horror genre. I get made fun of incessantly on Damn You Hollywood by Robert and Alexis and Jason Teasley because I just am very resistant to doing anything related to horror. There's the occasional, huge franchise thing that I feel like I just can't avoid by, the way that we've designed that podcast, so I'll watch them. Stephen King's It. Later this year, we're going to do Dr. Sleep, I think it's called, which is the sequel to Stephen King's
Shining.
The Shining. Thank you. I even thought about doing Child's Play because there's a huge franchise to kind of to mine and talk about or whatever. It just happened to be the same week as something, I think, the Lion King or something. So it's just, we weren't going to get it. It wasn't the Lion King. It was something else. We weren't going to get to it. So earlier this year, though, I did go see Crawl. So I will see the occasional horror movie if the topic is something that I'm interested in. Had it not been for doing a podcast where we look at a lot of television shows, mainly the stuff having to do with comics and franchises, I don't know if I would have watched this. But I would have been robbed of a good television experience if I hadn't watched it, because it's really quite good. I expected it to be more gross. And that's
jeez, wow, really?
And that's as good a place as any, because I had heard reviews on it. I didn't get to it until, the last episode, I think, is August 2nd. It started May 31st, and the 10th episode was August 2nd. We're getting to it now. It's the middle of August. And I just watched it last week. And going into it, I'm like, all right, let's make sure all the lights are on.
Yeah.
I had heard that it's gross and it's got, that it definitely mines the horror genre. Yeah. So I expected the worst out of this. And it was really quite tame, I thought. I don't know. So we'll start there. As far as the horror elements, what were you expecting?
Well, Well, yeah, I was not expecting what we got. I was actually taken aback. Some of the gross stuff that happened in it. That first episode when they're doing, I think it's the first episode when they're doing the autopsy on the dude that happened to be one of the unfortunate guys that got hit with the swamp disease or blight or whatever the hell it is, and basically turned into some kind of crazy root. Just nastiness. All right, but he's dead. All right, so they take him and they autopsy him, and that was when I was like, oh my gosh. The body started breaking in half, and roots and vines and stuff started coming out of him. And I put this on Facebook, and a lot of people might say that it was kind of, I don't know, sacrilegious to even say so, but John Carpenter's The Thing. Have you ever watched that?
Hi, I'm Mark. Have we met?
I know you're not the big horror genre guy. Kurt Russell's, and I'm talking about the one that stars Kurt Russell, by the way, because there's a scene in that where it's similar. We have the body horror, which was mentioned on the Source Material podcast. We have the body horror of somebody's body not I guess representing what a body should be. Something else has taken it over, and that is very, very prominent in that autopsy scene where just it almost like stands up on its own, and the dead body's half apart. It was nasty. And when you see the guy, before they even take him back, he's at his sink. He's trying to, obviously he's dead, but you could tell he was trying to figure out what was going on with him when he died, because out of his mouth is a tree root or something, and he's just become all viney and scaly. There were many spots throughout this series, and I think you said that it does tame off, or does kind of trail off towards the end. It doesn't get as gross, which you're right. Those first, 4 or 5 episodes there is an element in there that's pretty gross usually. There's going to be a scene that kind of makes you go, ugh. And it's always something to do with the mouth. That's what, the little girl throwing up the weeds and stuff, or the swamp plants. I was like, ugh. That was, something's always shooting out of somebody's mouth. And that was what I think got me. And even at the end, the final episode, I think it was the final episode, Avery ends up doing that. And there was just some nasty stuff that happened throughout it. So as far as the gross things, I am completely on the side of the people that say it was way gross. It was a lot more disgusting than I was expecting it to happen. And there was a lot of, and we'll probably touch on this too, but on top of the grossness, you had the supernatural elements throughout the series too. Mm-hmm. They kind of dealt with possession and all this other stuff. But there's my take on it.
So, just to put a pin in this put an exclamation point on this conversation and move on. Like I said, going into it, I had
here comes the swamp vine. It's coming out, Mark. Cough it up.
start barfing swamp water. Going into it, I had heard that there was a lot of visual horror elements, and it wasn't scary. It just gets gross at times. And they were in the first 3 or 4 episodes. They're dead on with that. Like you said, after that, they're more dealing with the story. There's less of it. You get used to seeing Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing doesn't look particularly gross to begin with. I'll tell you what I got frightened of, though. I want to say, we were talking recently about when you were first exposed to horror, and I brought up the fact that I used to watch my dad's VHS tapes, movies that he had taped off of HBO. Mm-hmm. So probably between the ages of 6 and 8, when I was old enough, maybe even 5, when I was old enough to be able to independently operate the VCR and go
know
through
what
my
you're doing.
Go and be able to read. So that would have been an element too. So probably more 6. Be able to read the VHS tapes. Read my dad's handwriting and say and just play different movies. Go kids. If you're listening to this podcast, there used to be a thing called a VCR and VHS tapes. You may have also heard the term Betamax. Don't worry about that.
Ooh, yeah. Let's just skip that education.
But you could probably get about 2 movies onto a VHS tape before you ran out of tape. So my dad taped a lot of stuff off of HBO, usually 2 movies apiece, and one of those was Poltergeist.
Oh yeah,
and that movie scared the piss out of me for a long time. Like, you know, the tree. I had a tree outside of my window when I was a kid when we lived in Uniondale, New York, and I thought that tree was going to kill me, just like it tried to kill that kid.
Another great example of, you know, stuff coming out of somebody's mouth. Do you remember when there's a point where he's about ready to go to bed in that movie, and he like coughs up something or throws up something, and it ends up being this like wiggly worm, and it turns into this big gooey thing and crawls out the fucking bedroom but you know, right before it leaves the room, it looks back at him and kind of smiles. Oh, it's so nasty.
I don't remember that. I do remember Craig T. Nelson's face peeling off.
Oh, dude, that shit stays with you. Trust me. I was there.
Okay, so the reason why I brought that up, so people are like, what are we doing, Swamp Thing or Poltergeist here? Or just things to go bump in the night. Craig T. Nelson's face peeling off, and to a lesser degree, the final scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where everyone starts melting when they open up the Ark of the Covenant. Spoilers. Both of which grossed me out so much as a kid that those are still with me. So when there's the part early on in Swamp Thing where the girl starts ripping off like her IV, and like Swamp Thing is like grabbing portions of his head and pulling it off and everything, and I'm like, oh, she's gonna rip her face off. Like even when Quagmire does it on Family Guy, like he did acid or something and ripped off his own face, I can't deal with it. Like I gotta look away. So I'm scared to fucking death. This poor kid is gonna start tearing at her own skin. Now she doesn't. She doesn't even. I've had an IV in me. It's not that easy to pull out. But when she manages to pull an IV out without getting blood everywhere, but she does. And thankfully, it just ends with that. But, like, you know, they use, like, a slow motion effect, and there's that music, sound effect going along with it. So I'm just like, she's going to pull her face off. I'm like, you know, hiding behind my fingers. I'm a 43-year-old man.
Hey, I think I was wrong, by the way. I might have been thinking about Poltergeist, too.
Okay, so, yeah, because I don't remember that from the first Poltergeist.
Yeah, I remember. It's Craig T. Nelson who definitely does the puking. And here's just like, Anyway, all right, go ahead.
But, yeah, so there's that. There's a bit with the guy with the bugs, where he's just made up of bugs now.
Oh,
and they're crawling out of his mouth and stuff like that.
I'm telling you.
Yeah, that was gross. Beyond that, though, you know, the occasional like creepy ghost that they do, like so in the show, for those that you know, I'm assuming people who have listened to this have watched the show. There's a bit where they continue. One of the major plot points of this is that Abby Arcane, who is played by Crystal Reed, was present on the day that the girl she grew up with, apparently something happened where she was adopted by the Avery family, so she kind of grew up with Shauna Avery as like her non-biological sister, and they were out messing around. They jumped off a bridge, they were in the water, and something in the water grabbed at Shauna and drowned her. Which, did they ever get to what that was? Did I miss something? Did they ever say what that was?
There's a lot of unanswered questions in this season. I think that is definitely one of them. My guess would be the darkness that was supposedly growing in the swamp. Okay. But whatever.
But something she managed to survive jumping off a bridge into the water, and then you know Abby goes in after her, and she comes up for air, and she's like, "You dick," and then suddenly something pulls her down again, and you know, and so she drowns, and so. For years, Abby carried around the guilt of having not been able to save Shauna, blaming herself for letting Shauna drown because she did not make the connection that something pulled the girl, you know, underneath, like her brain just blocked it or whatever, PTSD, what have you. But it's a major reason why Abby left Murray in the first place, you know, and went gallivanting about the world as a doctor in the CDC. Well, Shauna shows up a few times as a ghost. And, of course, she looks like, you know, the chick from The Ring. She's gross. She's pale.
She's wet.
She's damp. She's moist.
Yes, indeed.
And again, it didn't bother me. It's not pleasant to look at, but as far as considering how bad the horror genre can get, I didn't think that was too bad.
Ooh, what'd you think of the dude getting the hook through the face? That scared me for a second. I mean, that as far as like that was
I don't
like
even remember this.
You don't remember like the dude? He was a cop. I think it was his first or second episode, and they're out there.
Oh, you're talking like the harpoon?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Damn.
I don't know. I can occasionally deal with a slasher film, and you're right, that was very slasherish. It was. So Robert Winfrey made me go see the last Saw movie, which is a lot of dismembering people. Plus, I watched the Purge series on USA Network last year. There's a lot of stabbing that goes on in these things. And so, like, a guy getting stabbed in the face with a harpoon, even though, like, I love the camera direction on that shot because it happens off camera, right?
Yeah.
He's just talking. He's just like, hey, I might be arresting you guys. One never knows. I'm a game warden. Fucking harpoon through the side of the head. And the camera doesn't even move. It's just
no way you thought
wide on his face with the harpoon in there. And he's like, so good. It was jarring, but like I wasn't like, Bobby, calling up Melissa, come home.
Yeah. Well, those moments are definitely prevalent throughout the series. So, and as you get towards the end, just like you said, some of them kind of slack off. I think towards like the last episode had a few kind of gross moments, but I know like a couple episodes prior to that, they were mostly focused on the story of Swamp Thing and who he was and what he was. Well, I don't know, man. You could say the autopsy was pretty gross, but really, he's just digging into
I want to save talking about the anatomy lesson.
Yeah,
that like deserves its own topic. But moving on from the horror elements, I think we've sufficiently talked about that. Let's talk about some of our characters here. Let's talk about Crystal Reed as Abby Arcane. Abby Arcane, the CDC doctor, who comes back to Murray, as I said before, after having left due to the guilt of being present for Shauna's death. When we meet her, she's somewhere in Africa dealing with an outbreak of like Ebola or whatever. And just, they tell her, hey, some crazy swamp virus is killing people in Murray. And so she comes home, and not only does she have to deal with this crazy virus that nobody understands because it's not really a virus, but she has to deal with confronting her past. Mm-hmm. And her story is intertwined with Alec Holland, who is a disgraced biologist, botanist. What is he?
I cannot remember.
Scientist.
Yep, there you go.
He's a disgraced scientist who's working for Avery Sunderland, who's basically our villain in this thing, more so than anybody else present. And so he's there working for the company, and he's supposed to be doing one thing, but he's now trying to figure out what's causing the for the lack of a better phrase, the swamp virus. And so they are intertwined because, they're now working towards the same goal, and so they start working together. Just in general, what did you think of Crystal Reed's portrayal of Abby Arcane?
I think she did a fine job. She had to portray somebody that was obviously dealing with a dark past and having to go back and face that. I'll never. I specifically remember when she walks into the bar. She thinks she's going to have a good time catching up with her friend and sitting there talking to. Oh my gosh! Well, anyway, she's going there, and then
Liz Tremaine.
And then oh my gosh,
Maria Sunderland.
When she shows up,
yes.
She shows up and she's just like, no nonsense. I knew that immediately there was some tension because she starts crying, and you could see her eyes welling up, and I was like, oh man, they have these two have a history, and it's a very sad very sad history. The fact that she was brought into that family, grew up a sister to them and a daughter to the Sunderlands, and then she turns around and ends up being involved in that accident that gets her, the Sunderland's actual daughter, killed. So anyway, dealing with that, she had to portray, all that regret, all that history, and then, she also has to be this brave, woman, Wonder Woman type figure, where she's got to face head on this crazy disease that's going around this swamp. And not only that, she also has to, once she finds out about the swamp thing, she's got to deal with that as well. So she, for a female character here in this show, she did a fine job, being one of the more prominent characters. I can't really say much. I didn't have any problems with her acting, that's for sure. I think she did fine.
Despite the fact that the show is called Swamp Thing, she's the star of this thing.
Yes, Abby Arcane is the star.
And I would tell you that, by and large, if she's not working, the show kind of falls apart. The whole thing is kind of tethered to her. And I'm bringing that up because when we do these TV parties, part of the reason why I kind of dissect the show by looking at individual characters and performances, because a lot of times the problem with the show, if you go back and listen to our Lost in Space show that we did, there are some elements of the show that don't work because the characters are either poorly written or poorly acted. And in this case, and like I said, Swamp Thing's probably one of the best shows I've seen this year, not involving the sale of crack cocaine. So there's no crack in Murray, from what I can tell. Just let it share. But no, this Swamp Thing was actually one of the best shows I've seen this season. It was solid throughout, and a large portion of that goes to the fact that she's solid as an actress. She is sympathetic. Her character doesn't do wild and stupid things. I don't know if she necessarily has a tremendous arc. I think in a lot of ways she's just sort of reacting to things, and then she has a very, very solid, very concrete code of, I am a doctor, I am a healer. And so, like I said, I don't know. I don't know how much of an arc there is. I don't know if she's much different at the end of the show than she is at the beginning. But she's definitely reacting to a lot of things, and she's carrying a lot of weight with her. And if there is an arc, it's more because she comes to understand what her role is in Shauna's death.
Yes,
and realizes that it's not her fault, and she's able to forgive herself, and she gets a little bit stronger as a human being because of it. But for a lot of it, she's just kind of being a leader, and she's a hero, and she's reacting to this town coming apart at the seams.
Mm-hmm. And I think you made a good point in the fact that she has to reconcile her past. She's back here. She has to deal with her, her sister's death, and the fact that her family blames her for it. And she has to deal with all that. And by the end of towards the end of the series or the season, she is definitely able to overcome that. She realizes what a manipulative prick that Avery is, and the fact that her mom is not doing well at all, and she understands it. Well, that she's just dealing with it as she can. But anyway, yeah, I mean, she did a fine job. Just like you said, central character. Obviously, her relationship with Alec Holland's a big part of this, where she is kind of like she's the link for Swamp Thing to the town and the real world, I guess you'd say.
Weirdly, this show is one of the few where I don't have any complaints about anyone in the cast.
Okay.
It's a weird thing, because normally there's somebody who I think is shrill, or I think, there's an actor who their performance drove me up the wall. I can't think of, even Ian Ziering as Blue Devil. Who would think, like, oh, isn't he the 90210 and the Sharknado guy? I was goofing on that before. Like, really? I bet he sucks. No, he's actually really good. Like, I feel bad for this guy because he gets such schlock parts. But he's actually quite a good actor, at least as near as I can tell in this show. Yeah,
I can't think of anybody that I had a problem with. I think if I was going to complain about anybody it would be Will Patton. I think that's his name. I had the cast in front of me here. Who plays Avery? I don't know. Maybe it was just his motivation for the character, but he smiles all the fucking time, and
that's way Southern though. Like you gotta forgive that. That's like an antebellum old South kind of a. Everyone is super polite and super light and smiley, but they're dicks underneath.
Yeah, you want some of this turtle soup? Since I own the building, I let myself in. And I'm like, oh.
I'm making some turtle soup.
But it's like he can't stop smiling. I don't know what it is, but that kind of drove me nuts. However, I will say that the best acting job on here, I honestly think, was Kevin Durant as Floronic Man, or Dr. whatever the hell his name was.
Jason Woodruff.
Jason Woodruff, yep. See, I'm going to rely on you for names, even though I have the internet in front of me. I cannot remember. Now, I forgot Swamp Thing's actual name, Alec Holland, by the way. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Kevin Durant, at first I was like, oh man, this guy's a dick in everything I've watched. Everything I've watched. I'm like, this guy's he's going to make it miserable for me. But he had that eccentricity. Is that a good word? Yeah, about him that made him like, okay, this is the kind of the guy that I just read in the Swamp Thing book. He's got that weird, like, just that side of actually normal. He's a scientist who's really wrapped up in his work and odd. He's kind of an oddball.
Yeah, he's playing the character as very committed to his work as a scientist. Like almost on the autism spectrum. Like he's just utterly socially awkward and devoted to his work and his wife.
Yep.
But but in social interactions, he's like just a fucking ass.
Yeah, the first time we meet him, he walks onto the Sunderland's property and he immediately runs over to this gardener who's tending to this tree, and he's like, "You need to go get sugar and you got to get some water and we got to put this in there, soak it in the roots. This thing is in shock." Right. So he obviously knows what he's doing, but then he walks up to meet Avery Sunderland and puts his hand out to shake his hand, and his hand is covered in dirt.
Right, and his wife just wants to push him in the pool.
Yeah, she's like, "Yeah, this fucking guy.
You're not allowed to talk to people. Go away."
Yeah.
Let's we're skipping ahead here, and I don't disagree with you. I don't know what else Kevin Durant has been in. I don't really remember him. Like a lot of people in this cast. Some I recognize, some I'm like, I would have to Wikipedia you. You don't look familiar at all. But I thought he did a great job of playing that, like, personality disordered, autism spectrum, highly intelligent, socially awkward, Sheldon-like scientist.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that he would turn himself into a plant man.
Yeah, and we get to see just a tiny bit of that. Man, it's heartbreaking to know that we're not going to get a second season of this because you just get a tiny bit of that.
Let's put a pin in that because I want to come back to it at the end of the podcast about what's next for Swamp Thing.
Sure.
Because I don't want to get sidetracked with basically where Warner Brothers is going with their streaming services. That's a whole other conversation.
All right.
Let's talk about Andy Bean and Derek Mears as Alec Holland and the Swamp Thing. So there's Andy Bean, who I believe... Yeah, Andy Bean is the actor who plays Alec Holland, and then when he transformed into Swamp Thing and they're filming the Swamp Thing scenes, that's Derek Mears. And I thought the portrayal of him by Andy Bean was fine. What I liked here, this is what I wanted to say. I want to see if you agree with me on this. I thought Andy Bean and Crystal Reed had tons of on-stream chemistry.
Oh yeah,
I thought the two of them, and this is the third leg holding up the second leg holding up the stool, because as I said before, if she's not working, the whole series kind of falls apart. The other leg, if it's not working, the whole thing falls down, is Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
If he's not sympathetic, or if he looks shitty, or if his scenes are just labored and meandering, then the whole series is going to fall apart because there's not a whole lot else keeping this thing up of interest.
Agreed. There's the episode where, I mean, Andy Bean doesn't get a whole lot of screen time when you think about it. I mean, he was probably in, what, 3 or 4 episodes of this?
He's in the entire first episode.
Yep. Okay, so that's where the Swamp, at the end of that, he becomes Swamp Thing.
Right.
And then there's the episode where he uses the hallucinogenic plant to make it look like him. And he's in that episode all the way through. So we're talking maybe 2.5 to 3 episodes at most, where and the other episodes are just bit parts. But either way, there definitely is some chemistry between the two to where it feels like these two have a kinship. The two characters have a kinship, and you can understand the love, I guess you would say, that Swamp Thing has for Abby. He did a great job, in my opinion. Whenever he was on the screen, I believed what both of those two were doing.
Yeah. I never got to a place where I wasn't, and this is again a common problem you have with a lot of TV shows these days, especially the ones we cover here, is you get cast members that are such absolutely terrible people, you're not rooting for them, and they're your leads, they're your stars. Yeah. You know, your Mackies, your McNulty's. The people who they are the big leg on the stool holding everything up, but they're so terrible that you're conflicted about like rooting for them. There's really nobody who's a lead on this show who I'm rooting against because I hate them. You know, I want Swamp Thing to become human again. I want Abby to solve the problems, and I'm cheering for her. And she's, the way she's written. I want her to be successful. I like her. I like Alec Holland. I'm cheering for him. I want him to be successfp.
We want him to get cured. We want him to come back.
I'm not looking for any of the monsters to fucking dismantle him. And I'm actively rooting against Avery. Like, sometimes they make these villains just cooler than the other side of the pillow, to where you're like, I wish they'd win. Like, no, I want him in the turtle soup.
Some turtle soup. You can have the turtle soup.
Let me ask you a question: Have you ever butchered a giant turtle before?
Oh, dude! Speaking of gross, gosh, they had to go all in on that shit too, didn't they?
I'm sure he was like shown some like elementary like butchering techniques right before they shot that, and he was just like, he's like, this wasn't in the fucking script when I read for this. God damn it!
He's pulling out guts and all other stuff, nasty.
Yep.
But and
then he just left it there.
I probably would have done the same thing he did. Just start hacking and popping stuff off. There's the bottom. Take that off. Okay, here we go.
Gordon Ramsay's just watching. Make sure you get the knuckle. They do a lot of butchering on MasterChef. That's where that joke came from.
Oh man, the kitchen. Just thinking of the kitchen reminds me of when that guy was hallucinating and started stabbing his arm, and then stuck his damn arm down.
Yeah. Oh, that got to me. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of... Like, I can go see snakes when they're, caged up and everything at, like, an aquarium or a zoo or something. But, like, just... When he stuck his arm in there and he pulled it out and he's hallucinating the snakes wrapped around his arm and it's, wide and showing fangs and biting him. And I'm like, this is rough. Anyway. I thought Swamp Thing looked good. That was another problem I thought I was going to have with this. I thought they were going to go over the top, making Swamp Thing look gross. I thought the whether it was a bodysuit or whatever special effects they used to produce him, I thought they did a good job with.
Yeah, if it's practical or digital, however they did it, I mean, it looks fine. The good thing is that they don't have to worry about a whole lot of detail, just because. Most of it's shot in the dark anyway.
Yeah.
It's.
But it wasn't like Game of Thrones, the Battle of Winterfell.
No,
shot in the dark.
It wasn't that bad.
It was readable.
You could see what was going on. But yeah, there wasn't any times where I was having issues suspending my disbelief. I was able to say, oh yeah, that's the Swamp Thing, and he's taking care of business or whatever he's doing. So yeah, it looked good to me too. Derek Mears and his portrayal in it, I mean, I can't say that was fine too. I mean, really, when Swamp Thing was talking, it was like, that I guess I could maybe say I couldn't picture Andy Bean as being Swamp Thing at that point in time because Swamp Thing was so reserved, and when he would talk, it was like very. I would say it was just kind of held back. It wasn't like it was a human talking. Obviously, it's not. It's a Swamp Thing, but yeah, I was okay with Derek Mears' portrayal of Swamp Thing and how it looked.
Here's my one criticism of the show relative to Swamp Thing. There's a lot about the green, and later on, like I said, they'll actually turn Jason Woodrue into the Floronic Man. There's a lot of balls in the air.
Oh yeah,
that are thrown into the air in this season. Most of them get resolved. The stuff with Maria Sutherland more or less gets resolved. She tries to like overthrow Avery and get him killed.
That was a twist for me. Probably the biggest.
I didn't see that coming.
The show had no clue.
Yeah, and so she spends her B plot in this is she's like depressed and trying to stay connected to the ghost of her daughter, which they introduce a character from DC called Madame Xanadu, who's like, I wouldn't if I were you. There are dark forces afoot here, and you're going to mess things up. There's a lot of that going on. She mopes for a good portion of the series, and then somehow or other she comes out of it, and then she's wise to the fact that Avery and the sheriff had been sleeping together, and at one point early on, she's wise to Avery basically being broke. This is again part of like the C plot. That the whole reason this show exists and things are happening is that Sunderland is paying the locals to take boxes of a.
It's an accelerant, isn't it?
A mutant accelerant that was created by Jason Woodrue. They're throwing it in the water because the expectation is that the trees will grow exponentially faster and they'll draw water out of the swamp, and they can develop the land, and whatever else gets produced in the swamp they can use for medicines and biopharmaceuticals, that sort of thing. So that and of course what we learn through the course of the show is that the reason why the swamp is reacting the way that it is and people are getting sick is the swamp is fighting back. This leads to conversations about the green. This is where I started with this. And they touch on the green a bit. They dedicate at least one episode to the green and the darkness and the rot and everything. But they don't really get more into it. And I feel like they left a lot on the table thinking there was going to be a season 2, possibly a season 3. So they'll get to it. Mm-hmm. And I really hate that.
Well, we're coming off of those books from the 80s that we read with Alan Moore, and of course we've read other stuff with Swamp Thing in it where, they talked about the green, and there is so much possibility, but the problem is you only have 10 episodes to make that
right
first
down from
impression.
13. So
yeah, down from 13. You're right.
I feel like the show was paced pretty good up until the very end, where they know they had to like quick kill things. Because they were running out of time, and then they don't even have another season they can go back to, and deal with those balls on the air. It's
fucking last episode's called Loose Ends.
Yeah. The circus is packing and leaving and going to the next town. Good night, everybody. Yeah, and so I think that was probably one of the few frustrations I had about this show was they left a lot on the table. They clearly left the Floronic Man on the table. They left the green on the table.
Fucking Blue Devil.
What actually pulled Shauna down? They resolved the Blue Devil thing.
What? How?
He fulfilled the prophecy or whatever. He did what he was supposed to do as Blue Devil, and then he left town. He went back to Hollywood.
Oh, he did. I had no. Okay, I must have missed that. I thought
I might have been while you were napping.
Just remember, sir, that I remember the Blue Devil showing up and helping them out,
right,
and like burning the faces off of people. But then I didn't realize he had left. I thought he just took off and disappeared. And they actually said that he went back to Hollywood.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if you'll recall, he tries to leave early on in the season.
I do remember that. Yeah, he tries to go through and burns himself.
Right. And then he goes to see Madame Xanadu, and Madame Xanadu says that the time has come for better things, for cabbages and kings. The last of Wonderland for
you.
That's crazy. But Abby Arcane has come, and this is who you were meant to protect. And and he was like, "Okay, what do I have to do?" And he was like, "Can't tell you. Time, only time will tell." Eventually your purpose will be known. And at the end, where he has what's the character's name?
Who are you talking about here? I'll try and
Phantom
help
Stranger, Macon Blair is the Phantom Stranger. Another DC comic character. They really made pretty good use of D and fucking F-list characters.
Was that who it was supposed to be?
Yes.
Okay, I know the Phantom Stranger was the one that was in the episode where it was just him, showing up at Swamp Thing asking him about the fishing.
Right.
I knew that's who it was, but he was also involved in the Blue Devil arc.
Yes, he's the one that shows up on set that initially turns Ian Ziering into the Blue Devil.
I thought that was the devil himself or some shit.
Nope.
Okay,
that was the Phantom Stranger.
All right. Well, yeah, you could tell how how much I gleaned from that. That arc seemed to go by. First off, it wasn't featured in every episode, which is fine, but it really. He turned into the Blue Devil. He showed up and rescued him, and I thought, well, we're going to get more of this. He's going to be more involved. Maybe that's why I'm thinking it should have
nope,
lasted
left the mask on the side of the road and took the fuck off.
ABC, bye. All right.
Anyway, so this whole meandering part of our conversation here, I was starting with just wanting to talk about the Sutherlands, but I wanted to address what their arcs were and how they were intertwined. Talked a little bit about Maria. Just want to kind of shoot back to you. Her ebb and flow, her rise and fall. What did you think of Virginia Madsen as Maria Sunderland?
She did a fine job. Like I said, the biggest twist was finding out that she was working with, towards the end she was working with the sheriff. And, I felt for her. She lost her daughter. She's obviously going through stuff, and she lays that out all on the table right there, almost literally,
Mm-hmm.
when she finds Abby Holland at the bar and says, "This is what I've went through, and now you've shown back up." Where, she really does portray a grieving parent pretty well. And then, of course, things start to go off the deep end with where she starts seeing the ghost of her daughter, and then that ghost possesses the little kid, and it's we have those horror elements that are intertwined there. And then she thinks that she got rid of her husband, where their plot, the sheriff and hers plot to get him killed, and then he shows back up and has her committed. Now, help me out. Did she get released from the insane asylum, or was she still in there by the end of
I feel like by the end she was still psychiatrically committed.
Okay, so she was still in there. Yeah. I remember, doesn't Abby show up for like a quick second and talk to her, and she's like, there's no one there, and Madame Xanadu's there too. But she's a tragic character. I don't know if I imagine we'll be seeing, if they had a second season, they probably would have had something for her.
She definitely comes across as frigid and calculating and cold and kind of nasty, but she's not so over the top and bad that I wanted to see her get punished. Because the one person in this entire show, more so than Woodrue, more so than anybody else, is Avery Sunderland, played by, as you said before, Will Patton.
Smiley Will Patton.
It was so slimy. He's like friendly grandpa when he's threatening to murder you.
Oh, yeah.
He's so great. I thought, I guess it irked you, but I thought Will Patton was great. It's like taking somebody's hand, gently caressing their hand, and saying, if you continue to press this, I'm going to drown you in the swamp. Yeah. Want a biscuit? Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So good.
When Abby first came there, it was either the first or second time, and she was kind of accusing him or wanting to find out what was going on in his lab. I remember that. And he specifically looks at her and he says, she goes, "I can get a court order and go into your lab." And he goes, "Well, yeah, you could do that. I just want you to know And he says something that's kind of veiled threat, like, and then he's like, "But I'll still love you no matter what." You're like, wait a second, that isn't how this is supposed to be.
Hey, get out your Radulich and Broadcasting bingo cards, because I'm
here we go.
I'm going to make a wrestling reference.
Mm-hmm.
But Bruce Pritchard talks about how, like, Vince McMahon has this sociopathic way of dealing with people, to where they come in, they've been rehearsing, they have everything they need to go at Vince and be like, I want a raise, or I want time off, or I want a different character, or I want a trip to Europe.
Give me a push.
Yeah, something. Whatever it is that they want out of Vince that Vince isn't currently giving them. And by the end of it, or Vince has given you a thing and you don't want to do the thing, and so you go to Vince and you're ready to stand firm, like you're not taking no for an answer. And by the end of it, you got none of what you wanted. You've got more of what you didn't want, and somehow or other your pants is down and your asshole's greasy. You don't know what happened.
Yep.
Like I don't what?
Yeah. What how did I end up here? I don't understand. This is not where I was supposed to end up.
And that's very much the Avery Sunderland character. Until things start to just completely go off the rails for him, like when the corporation or whatever takes over, Swamp Thing fucking slaughters all those soldiers.
Oh yeah.
I would say up until that point, he was as slick and as smooth as any slimy villain in any show.
Yeah,
but he has such a soft touch about him.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. He's real soft spoken. It's rare that you hear him yell because he gets it across in that sweet Southern way that you were talking about. And that just makes you hate him that much more.
There's a phrase in the South that I've learned that when people say it means you're half an idiot or you're a fucking asshole or a retard or whatever. My wife talks about this all the time, because even though like her mom is actually originally from Pittsburgh, I think her dad may have been born here in Florida, but like he lived close to Cape Canaveral. But she tends to portray herself as, I'm from Tampa, I'm from the South. She was born for like 5 minutes in North Carolina and then lived in Ohio till she was, fucking 8 or 10 years old or some shit. But whatever, Tampa is also Mississippi. Got it. But I get picked on from being a wisecracking asshole blunt New Yorker. I don't know if listeners have picked that up about me or not, because I tend to hide it real well.
Yeah,
that's my nose just grew and put a hole in the wall. Anyway, but they say part of the reason why I sometimes have to modulate myself is because in the South, people are not that direct. People are not that abrasive. They're just as mean, but they do it in a kind of a backhanded way.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so there's a phrase, bless their heart, which is basically, if you lived in New York, is, hey, you fucking asshole.
What an idiot. What an idiot. That's what it is.
Forget about it. It's the same phrase. It's just a lot nicer said. Bless their hearts. Mm-hmm. He's very bless their hearts, is where I'm going with this. Like if you had to sum up his character in one sentence, as far as notes for the actor in creating a character to portray, he's just every Sunderland is all bless their hearts. Yes,
sir. There was almost a spot where it seemed like there might be some redemption for this guy after his wife, well, I should say his mistress, and we find out his son conspired to kill him, and he falls into the swamp, and you're like, oh boy, what's going to happen here? He's dead? Nope, he's still alive, and Swamp Thing even takes pity on his ass. And you're like, oh, okay, well, he's going to turn a corner. He's actually going to, realize that he's a lucky man, and now he needs to do things a little bit better. Nope.
That's a lot of nope.
A lot of nope, because all of a sudden the dollar signs start showing up in his eyeballs, and after the Floronic Man, our good buddy yeah, he ends up telling him, hey, if we can get a hold of this Swamp Thing guy, it'd be a lot of money in it for you. So,
let's take a pause for the cause here and talk a little bit about Podcoin.
all right.
Hey, everybody. I really do hope you love the Radulich Broadcasting Network. Did you know that you can actually get paid just for listening to this podcast? I know it sounds insane, but it's true. We just discovered this free new app called Podcoin, and it literally pays you to listen to podcasts. Here's how it works. You listen to podcasts, and you earn Podcoin while you listen. Then you turn that Podcoin in for gift cards at places like Amazon or Starbucks, or if you're a good person, you could even donate that Podcoin to charity. The more you listen, the more you earn. Here's what you do. Download the app right now on iPhone or Android, and I have a special code for you. Simply use our code MARKWED5. That's capital MARKWED 5. Capital MARKWED 5. MARKWED 5. And you'll get 300 Podcoin just for signing up. And if you listen to enough of us on there, you can get a cappuccino at Starbucks or an Amazon gift card on us. So go ahead and go listen to this podcast or virtually any podcast on Podcoin and sign up with code MARKWED5. I swear it'll change the way you listen to podcasts. All right, so two more characters I want to quick talk about. One major, one minor. We've mentioned them both in brief before, but I want to give them a full talk about, and then I want to talk about the anatomy lesson, and then last final thoughts, burning desires, and we'll get out of here. We got to talk a little bit more about Kevin Durant as Jason Woodrue, aka the Floronic Man, which he only becomes the Floronic Man at the end.
Yeah.
Selena Anduzzi plays Caroline Woodrue, who is his wife, who has she's developing Alzheimer's basically.
Mm-hmm. Very
some
sad.
sort of dementia. And so by the end of it, she's mute. She has no muscle control, and the plot line with them is after having done the dissection of Swamp Thing and realizing what he is and what all he can do, he comes to realize that using bits and pieces of him, he can maybe save his wife, and he just becomes obsessed with this. We talked, like I said, a little bit about Kevin Durant's portrayal as Jason. I thought, like I said, clearly the intention was for a season 2 where he would be the main villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when we do the anatomy lesson. They definitely cribbed liberally from Alan Moore's interpretation of Swamp Thing, which I was happy about. Obviously it's the one that most people think is the best in terms of solo Swamp Thing outings. So I'm glad that that's the motif they went with. Anything more about Kevin Durant's portrayal? I have to say, his delivery on some lines was a bit breathy for me, a bit too breathy. There were times where I wish he. I know it's in the portrayal, and I don't want to complain because it's acted well, but I'll talk a little bit about this when we talk about Krypton too, because the guy that got playing Lobo, sometimes I'm listening to him talk, and I'm like, could you enunciate?
Is he Australian in that? Is he?
He sounds Australian.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was curious. Well, yeah. I chalked it up to eccentricities. I'll use that word again. I mean, that's the way I kind of thought Kevin Durant was playing this character. And so when he would go on a monologue, I was like, well, that's exactly the way this fucking character would act. He would go on some type of a monologue and he was just, he didn't really seem evil at all right up until maybe the very end, where I honestly cannot say that he was evil in that aspect. I mean, obviously him wanting to get Swamp Thing and do the autopsy on him while he's fucking living, that's pretty bad. But all he was trying to do was save his wife. That was his main goal. He wanted to use whatever knowledge he could to do something so the love of his life would not die. And that's a very, very That's a, that's a valiant motive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get a little tired. We've talked about this before about, all the villains want to take over the world.
They're hegemonists.
It's like with Avery, they created a reason that he was a bastard. His company was going broke. Mm-hmm. If he didn't take a risk, if he didn't do something big time, they were going to be out of business. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can see now the desperation. It isn't just, I must destroy the swamp because I'm evil. That sort of thing. It's it made sense that he would kind of, for the greater good of himself and maybe even the greater good of man. I mean, he did talk about we want to create jobs and develop medicines here. Again, this isn't we're going to build a mall. Yeah, or whatever. Like sometimes they write these characters, and it's just, they're the evil corporate guy doing corporate-y things. Mwah! Mm-hmm. And it's deeper than that, and it's more realistic. And then you have Jason Woodrue, who he doesn't, yes, he obviously favors plant life, but he loves his wife, and he isn't necessarily the way they portrayed Jason Woodrue in the Alan Moore comic, where it was just like, I hate all human beings, what you've done to this planet. Yeah. He is just awkward. And he loves his wife, and he saw a goal, and like I said, like a very personality disordered or developmentally disabled person, he just focused on that goal and to the exclusion of all else. I know everybody fucking everybody associated with this network, at least, hates the Big Bang Theory. Because of what are they? It's like nerd, not minstrel, but something associated with minstrel.
Sure.
Something along those lines. They just hate the way that these characters portray stuff. People surrounded with this network like, but. I always, my counter argument is always, it's not about the nerd stuff. The show isn't about liking Star Wars and liking comics. The show is about 4 socially awkward guys who also happen to be very smart. Mm-hmm. And what it's like navigating the world that doesn't necessarily understand them or adapt to the way that they are. They have to adapt to it, and therein lies some degree of the humor. Yeah. And so, so I look at Jason Woodrue and I see Sheldon. And Sheldon could be sympathetic at times. You understood where he was coming from. He said many times in the show, I have great difficulty with change. Change produces a lot of anxiety in me, and I have to process it in my own way. They did an entire thing where so many things were changing around him all at once, he actually left for a while and took a train ride across the country.
Jeez.
So, when you have that kind of my wife comes home every day and she tells me about all these autistic kids that are in her school, and she doesn't teach. She teaches at a normal upper middle class elementary school in Tampa, but because of the college that's there and the cancer center and a lot of these places that are recruiting from all over the world, a lot of people are moving into the area and they're bringing with them kids with all kinds of disabilities. And she talks about how, she had one kid from the Middle East who just sat in the chair rocking and screaming.
Ooh. Oh, that'd be rough.
Yeah. And that's not the only one. There's a kid from one of the Caribbean islands that apparently only knows how to speak by singing the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse song. Who, by the way, referred to my wife today as "Oh Toodles."
Well, that's never going to die.
Oh, Toodles. Whenever my wife comes home, I always quote Quagmire on Family Guy, who, when he was trying to help Lois, I think it was, deal with an issue, he was like, "You want me to rub my sack on your face?" I say that to my wife constantly. She comes home and complains about something. I'm like, "Want me to rub my sack on your face?" And she literally tells me every time, she's like, "If you ever stop saying that, I'm going to assume something's wrong and we're headed for divorce." So I will add the "Oh Toodles" to that. Oh Toodles!
Oh Toodles!
You want me to rub my sack on your face? Anyway, so I'm glad that's the direction they took this character. That, nobody is mustache twirly evil. Everybody is sympathetic in their own way, but maybe single-minded to the exclusion of all else to where humanity suffers.
Yeah. There were a couple moments where you can kind of see maybe you could say, oh boy, that's a pretty dastardly thing to do, but most of the time Jason Woodrow just, to me, seemed like a guy that was going to, if there was a problem, he was going to try and figure out what it was in order to try and help either his wife or just the thrill of the scientific discovery. I remember when Blue Devil showed up at his house, he almost acted excited. Even though the guy showed up there in the middle of the night and he turned into blue flame, but he was like, this is a process, and he did that to him. He did that to him on purpose. He's the one that injected that stuff into the IV.
Right.
But it was all just to kind of, he furthered his scientific goals and he didn't give a shit about any protocol.
Right. There's a lot of that in this show. Just real quick, like I said before, Ian Ziering, best known for playing a character on Beverly Hills 90210. He's now part of the reboot. In recent years, he's done a lot of sci-fi schlock. Let's have some fun here, Jesse.
Okay.
You want to have some fun?
Always.
So here's the last couple of films he's done. Okay.
Oh boy, oh boy.
He did a Netflix film called Malibu Rescue. He did a film called, in 2017, he did a film called F the Prom.
I'm curious about Malibu Rescue. Is it like a fucking Baywatch ripoff or something? It's gotta.
Malibu Rescue is an American comedy web television series created by Savage Steve Holland and Scott McAvoy for Netflix. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So it's a series. Only it's listed in film. Let's see here. He's in a film called Snake and Mongoose.
Sounds great.
It's a 2013 film about Don the Snake Prudhomme and Tom the Mongoose McEwen, the greatest rivalry and friendship in drag racing history. Drag racing.
This dude has B-movie written all over him. Almost not even B. I mean, you can't.
He's in a lot of films that don't have Wikipedia links.
Yeah, it's like Disney's vehicle movies. Okay.
Let's look at his television roles, shall we? Because
he's
he's
probably got some Lifetime movies on there.
Oh no, he's got shit tons of television roles. Like after Melrose Place, he was on 3 episodes. Sorry, after Beverly Hills 90210, he was on 3 episodes of Melrose Place. He was on an episode of Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
Oh my gosh, that's a great show. Kubiak.
He was on an episode of VIP, which my uncle worked on. I don't know if you know that. Yep.
I did not know that.
He has a voice role for the, I guess this is an animated series. Yeah, the Godzilla the series that aired between 98 and 2001. He played Dr. Nick Tatopoulos. He's in Batman Beyond the movie as Mason Forrest, and he had 1 episode of Batman Beyond. He's done the 2003 animated Spider-Man as he's Harry Osborn. That's
a pretty big role. I mean, really.
This guy's working, man. So
yeah, he definitely has. He's got some. I think as Blue Devil, he did a great job. Mm-hmm. You've already said you liked what he did. I was equally impressed. I was like, I was kind of excited to see him in this. It's what's interesting because, I watched Beverly Hills 90210 with my wife, for I think I watched the last 2 seasons with her back when it was on, and so I knew who this guy was. But, and whenever I would watch something where he'd kind of pop up, I'd be like, oh hey, look, it's Ian Ziering again. There he is, and here, when seeing him in this as a very very recurring role, I was kind of excited. I was like, oh, this is actually going to be good. So, I mean, he has a ton of stuff. I'm still going through all the things. Sprout NATO? The hell was Sprout NATO?
No. You missed the best one here. Lava Lantula.
What?
Lava Lantula.
Oh, yes. That's a sci-fi movie. I remember that one. Oh, jeez.
After a film that takes place after a series of volcanic eruptions in Los Angeles unleashes a swarm of gigantic lava-breathing tarantulas.
What? What's his name? Finn Shepard. Oh, dude,
Yeah.
he plays. So Finn Shepard is.
Also in the Sharknado movies.
So he's the same character from the Sharknado movies.
That's
Wow.
fantastic.
That's owning that role.
But he's not Finn Shepard. He's Hunter Shaw in the upcoming zombie tidal wave,
Zombie tidal wave.
which we will be reviewing here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network in the near future. Yeah, dude, success. This guy is box office gold.
Dancing with the Stars season 4.
Yeah.
That really brought a lot of people back into prominence. He made it all the way to week 9.
Yeah,
into the semifinals, and then got eliminated.
You know, I think playing the frustrated, like, struggling actor who is cursed, you know, and
Wait a second. He's playing this role?
I give him a lot of credit. I thought he had fun with this role. I actually, you know, I did not enjoy him ironically.
Yeah.
Which I think is the you know, the fear of dealing with a character like this. I actually really enjoyed him here. I don't really know anything about the Blue Devil, do you?
Nope. No clue.
Okay.
I noticed that when I can't remember, it was the character, the girl that owned the bar, or was in that restaurant with her dad. Anyway, I noticed she opened up an iPad at one point and actually had the cover of a DC Blue Devil comic.
Oh yeah, there's
there.
like actual DC Blue Devil stuff all over his store.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So I just generally when we do these TV parties tonight, like I said,
You believe he's 55 years old?
yes,
55.
yes I do. Everybody we know from our childhood is in their 50s or older.
That's amazing. He does not look that at all. Go ahead.
So when we do these TV parties, you know, we talk about the shows by talking about the characters, and that's how we flesh things out. I don't like to go through it episode by episode because there's a lot of details that I just don't remember. I don't want to get bogged down, and we'll be here for 10 hours. But I do want to talk about the anatomy lesson.
Yep.
When we covered this on the Swamp Thing source material, which is now in our archives, you can check that out right here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. It's in your feed if you subscribe to us through Podcoin.
That's right.
Right now, you'll get extra Podcoin by listening to any of our meanderings. So go ahead and do that. At least 10 minutes, folks. For 10 minutes of your time, why not get paid to listen to our blathering? Right?
That's right. Hey, real quick, I know you're getting ready to get into the anatomy lesson. You couldn't think of where Kevin Durand was from? He played Fred Dukes in the Wolverine movie, basically the Blob.
Oh, that's who that was?
Yes.
Fantastic. Good job.
All right, go ahead.
So I think I texted you offline that I hope one of these, because I knew that they were like, they kept saying early on in the series, we got to get the Swamp Thing on the table, we got to look at him, we got to figure out what this guy is, and just in kind of reading a little bit about the show, you know, the description of Alec Holland / Swamp Thing is he's trying to hang on to his humanity, and I'm like, this is sounding an awful lot like Alan Moore's interpretation of Swamp Thing.
Yep.
I hope they do the anatomy lesson.
Yep.
And they do. I both love and hate this episode. I hate it because it's not enough of the actual. Oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? Where they dissect a dead body after, where a doctor. Oh Lord. Hopefully they'll actually use the word in this. Autopsy. Jesus.
Yeah. Why? I was gonna lead you there, but I didn't know. I thought, well, that seems too easy.
Damn my chemo riddled brain! I can't remember words.
At least you have an excuse. Damn.
Donald Trump has all my words. He has the best words. I don't know if you knew
He has
that or
the
not.
best words.
He does have
Yes.
the best words. He doesn't have the best countries though, but he's working on it one by one.
Start with Greenland.
Starting with Greenland. God bless him. Anyway. So they're doing the autopsy. So he's doing the autopsy, and in the comic, he spends almost like 90% of the comic doing it. And I told you when we discussed the comic book just how poetic and fluid and sounds like a song the way that he's talking about and philosophizing as he's doing the autopsy. I kind of wish that's what this was. Mm-hmm. There's an episode of Breaking Bad called The Fly, which is kind of like that.
It's a great one.
Yeah, I kind of wish that's all this was just 40 minutes or so of him at the table. I wanted him to eat yams.
Yes, buddy, I understand.
I wanted yams.
Wanted to see it all. It was... Here's the problem. We have the unfortunate distinction of reading what this was based on going into this episode. I would have loved to have not had that knowledge, just to see how this episode would have resonated with me, because I don't know if it hit like it would have or should have. I mean, I imagine that was a big deal for other people. Have you talked to anybody that hasn't read the anatomy lesson before watching this to see?
I personally don't know anyone that's watched this.
Okay.
I have a sneaking suspicion when they plotted the series out, because this shares the same thing as Liz and Abby trying to save Alec from Jason, and they are helped by Blue Devil, and this is the episode where Ziering is able to take off and go back to Hollywood. I have a sneaking suspicion this got contracted into one episode when they lost 3.
Oh, okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. So they had to make some concessions and get this in there, and yeah, the slow build to it probably wasn't there. I mean, I don't know. It felt. It just didn't feel like, to me, since I knew what was coming, I think that diminished how it impacted me. But it was still good. It was still, I could see them picking at him, the Floronic Man, Jason Woodrue, just picking at him and taking those things out, and the revelation of like, oh my gosh, this is a lung, but it doesn't act like a lung. I just had, I knew what was coming, and that kind of spoiled it for me. So
yeah, I wish like we had just had like full on like orchestral music and him just examining and narrating.
Yeah, it could have been done a lot better. Instead, we had. It had to be rushed towards the end.
I was gonna say they don't spend that long doing it. Like he kind of just cuts into him. And he pulls out the heart and lungs, and then it's like, oh, well, these don't work. You're a plant. You think you're Alec Holland.
Oh,
and then
damn!
And then it turns into fucking John Wick. People are just getting shot, and
in the background, you just hear Swamp Thing going, no, and that's it.
Yeah, like it's so much better in the comic book, and I know, and I'm not really one of these people. This is like the comic book was better, yeah. But in this particular case, they had gold. All they had to do was at least approximate what was in the comic book, and instead they kind of pointed to it, but then focused on all this other stuff. In an episode called The Anatomy Lesson, which again, I'm glad you're pointing to it at best, but I feel like as a fan of that particular issue, it was we were underserved.
Yeah, there isn't really a whole lot of. Well, you said that you got kind of the idea that Alec Holland or the Swamp Thing was trying to figure out his place and what he was. Now, that's definitely there. But throughout the episodes, it may have been better served if they could have weaved some more stuff in there about this upcoming existential crisis that was going to happen, just to give it that much more weight.
Right. In the comic, when he finds out that he's a plant, he roots himself.
Yeah, he fucking goes through some shit.
Yeah, he fucking gives up on being Alec Holland.
He's like, all right, I'm a Swamp Thing, and proceeds to turn into a thing that just lies in a swamp.
Right. And it's only when Abby's and I think that would have made that more effective. Like, if they might have gone in that direction. Who knows what those last 3 episodes would have been like? I have a funny feeling that if we had gotten through more episodes, we'd be sitting here like, it's too long. It needed to be 10 episodes.
Yeah.
We're never happy.
No, we aren't.
But that was my experience with the Marvel shows, where I thought they were way too long, and I just maybe 13. I could have used another 1 or 2 more episodes to really flesh things out.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff packed into these 10.
Yeah.
When you think of, just like you said, Avery has 3 subplots practically. We find out towards the end, he's the dad of so-and-so, and you're just like, whoa, this guy has a lot of shit going on. Then you've got other characters that have even more layers. Blue Devil, all these characters have layers that just didn't really have the time to be exposed. Right. Instead, it was just like, here you go. This is all of it, and we got to get to the end somehow.
Now, there's a, and this is one criticism I have of the writing. There is definitely a lot of Abby moping.
Poor frowning Abby, yeah.
Mopey.
There's the only time you see her smile, I think, is when she's with Alec.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time you see her smile, which is that's perfect for them too. But yeah, she's moping around and trying to come to grips with what the hell the Swamp Thing is, and it's like, all right, well, we once or twice is good enough, then we can move on from there.
Last words, Jesse. Any burning desires? I personally love the show. I mean, no show is perfect, and this one had its blemishes. But I would say, compared to a lot of the other TV that I watch, I would definitely, especially for this year alone, put this in my top 5. I really fell in love with the show once I got into it.
Well, then let me ask you here. I mean, we're talking DC streaming, streaming stuff here. What do you think here? Doom Patrol or Swamp Thing? You're going to put Doom Patrol above it or below?
I'm going to put Doom Patrol above it because by the end, I don't think they left anything on the table.
I agree.
I thought they told the complete story, even though they left it with a cliffhanger. But that's the problem. I don't know if they knew they were getting a second season. They certainly wrote like they did, and I thought as a meta sort of commentary on the world of comic books and media and their fans, while still telling this tale of very fractured
and fucking Alan Tudyk. Oh, Alan Tudyk.
Yeah, I thought Doom Patrol is the best thing I've seen on as far as original stuff on DC Universe. It's like Doom Patrol, a very close second to Swamp Thing, and a distant 45 is Titans.
All right.
What a shit show that was.
I liked it. It had its bright spots. I was okay.
I'm hoping...
Fuck Batman.
Fuck Batman. I'm hoping Titans, because I know the show had been in development for a long time, so I'm wondering how much of what was being developed years and years ago made it into the show. But now, but it's, they're doing another season. It's debuting shortly, as a matter of fact. I think in September it's debuting. And they found out pretty shortly after Titans dropped in either late December or January that they were getting another season. So I would say, I'm hoping that the second season picks it up a bit. I have high hopes that it's good. But so far of the 3, yeah, Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing are neck and neck. And I'll put Swamp Thing up against any of the Marvel shows. I'll tell you, it's far superior to anything I've seen in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
It's better than The Runaways. Not by much, but I think The Runaways is quite good. It's better than Cloak and Dagger. Again, not by much, but still better. I would say probably the best of the Netflix Marvels. It was probably that first season of The Punisher.
I like that one. Yeah.
Third season of Daredevil, I would say it's probably as good as. I love the first season of Luke Cage, but I'm biased on that. It's definitely better than fucking either season of Iron Fist.
Yeah. Well, my final thoughts here. I did enjoy what I was watching. I am upset about it not possibly having a season 2. So did you want to talk about that? You kind of mentioned okay, we've got the Warner Brothers, whatever the hell is going to happen. HBO Max. What's going on again?
All right. So right now, Warner Brothers is trying to figure out what they're going to do with their streaming services because they've got TNT, they've got TBS, they've got DC Universe, and they've got HBO. but they're introducing a over the top, a rival to like Disney Plus, to where like everything they own is going on it. From what I understand, called HBO Max.
Okay.
And I know for a fact that they're right now. From what I've heard, they're keeping DC Universe around, but a lot of stuff that's on DC Universe is doubling on HBO Max. So I'm kind of hoping that I know Watchmen, which is a DC property, is getting its own series on HBO later this year. I'm kind of hoping that they decide, okay, we know that for budgetary reasons the show had problems, but let's greenlight a second season. Let's budget it out, and let's just make it maybe exclusive to HBO Max. Mm-hmm. See what happens. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that's what saves it. Is that okay? I mean, I don't know the minutia. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on this, and I don't really understand a lot of the minutia with this stuff. But I know they're all owned by the same company, so I don't know what stops them from saying, yeah, the people running the DC Universe app don't want to do another season of this because of costs. But what if we put it under the HBO tent? Mm-hmm. Which fucking Game of Thrones, it would take them 2 years to shoot a season. It was like retarded expensive. Rome was retarded expensive. I don't know if you remember the show Rome.
I remember hearing about it, yeah.
Yeah, that show cost like $1 zillion. That's why it only lasted 2 seasons. I think Carnival was also, even though it was looks like it was shot in a dusty parking lot somewhere, was also apparently pretty expensive, which is why that only lasted, I think, 2 seasons, even though I think the developer of that one had wanted to create like a universe for Carnival to. I think he had stories planned out for like 8 seasons, and HBO was like, "How about 2? How about calm the fuck down? How about that?
How about we don't have $1 trillion for your show?"
Yeah. So maybe it'll get. Maybe if it was, if they look at the numbers and they go, "Well, people watched it. It drew eyeballs."
Oh, dude, if you could start like promoting. We're coming back for a second season, and we're going to be introducing or bringing in a lot of the dark magic-based characters, which would make this so, dude.
Bring in like the Justice League dark characters.
Yeah,
bring in Deadman. Bring in what's her face there, Zatanna. Yeah,
Constantine is already established on the CW, but I mean. He would fit well. I don't know, man. There's a lot more that if people enjoyed this, there's so much more that can be done. The green, the blight, the rot or whatever. There's so much, and then we have Floronic Man just waiting to be used. Which I have a pretty good feeling that Jason or. Oh, God. Duran could... Let's use his last name. I can't remember his first name. But I have a good feeling that Duran could make this guy portray him fantastically. So
you know what I think they should do?
Tell me.
I think they should bring fucking Firestorm.
You want me to put fucking Firestorm on my fucking Swamp Thing? And me goddamn Swamp Thing?
I guarantee, like they're talking to producers and showrunners about a second season of Swamp Thing, like whoever's like running HBO and like the Warner Brothers, they're just like, listen, we really want to draw eyeballs to this. We want to make this kind of the centerpiece of HBO Max. We need original content, exclusive content for people to spend yet more money on yet another streaming service. So we want to do another season of Swamp Thing. We just have some notes. Okay, get our pens and paper. We're thinking this season, Firestorm. And Alan Moore just like kicks open the door and shoots everybody. Fucking Firestorm.
You're all dead.
Everybody in this room's a whore. Especially the women.
Poor Alan Moore.
There's an episode of Family Guy where they mentioned some old actor, and it's like, hey, they said your name on the Family Man. Like, someone's gonna be listening to this podcast who like knows Alan Moore, but like these guys keep making fun of you for some reason.
Your name's on the internet.
Fuck the internet. The internet's a bunch of whores.
Give me their addresses. I've got a spell just waiting for them.
I cursed Grant Morrison. I'll curse these guys too. Welcome Firestorm. All right. I think we've hit the silly wall.
Yeah, we've crossed critical analysis and went straight into dipshittery.
So that's the end of our Swamp Thing discussion. Jesse, what just your final thoughts here? Just a sentence or two. Overall, A, B, C, D, F.
Yeah, Skippy. Well, hey, I had a good time watching it. I would recommend it for anybody that's a fan of the horror genre. There were people out there that were very surprised that I likened it to Carpenter's The Thing. You'll enjoy it if you like jump scares and some creepy stuff happening on the screen, and you won't be upset about the plot that's being told and some of the characters out there. So, go if you haven't watched it yet and you sat through this whole review to hear me pitch it again. Give it a chance.
Tomorrow night on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, me, Jesse, and Alan Moore will be reviewing...
He's there!
Thy Art is Murder. I'm just going to keep saying he's on the shows. We'll keep doing impressions of him. We'll be doing Thy Art is Murder, Human Target. And then we conclude a week of Swamp Thing shows with the 1982 Swamp Thing movie directed by Wes Craven, starring Angela Barbubi, who's also got a cameo in this series. I don't know if you noticed that. Yes, she was the lady above Abby Arcane, wasn't she? Yeah, she was the lady back in Atlanta at the CDC. Who was
I thought
she was giving her the business.
She was too. Which, by the way, going back to the show, another unresolved thing. Did her partner he gets abducted and thrown into a trunk, and then they're like, he got reassigned to somewhere.
Yeah.
Did he get killed?
I don't know.
Why did he get abducted?
I don't know. Maybe he's with Ian Ziering in California.
Fucking get me my pillow. I'm going back to sleep.
We've got a pair of shows for you Friday. Myself, Sleepy Jesse, and Al motherfucking Sedano will be doing a review of Good Omens. The show came out earlier this year on Amazon Prime based on the book. It's a 6-episode miniseries. I believe that's it for this show. They're done. So we're going to go ahead and review that. That'll be fun. And then as soon as that's over, there's a showbox card on Vladimir Shishkin versus DeAndre Ward. Myself and Robert Winfrey will be doing a watch-along for that. So that'll be fun. Robert Winfrey has Saturday off from doing UFC coverage, so I browbeat him into doing a coverage with me for Sergey Kovalev versus Anthony Yarde on ESPN Plus for the WBO Light Heavyweight Championship. We may do some more coverage later that night. There's a DAZN card at 9 o'clock, the Juan Francisco Estrada versus Dwayne Beeman, Steamin' Dwayne Beeman. And there's...
Is that his real nickname?
No, I got Steamin' something or other for a character in a show. And then there's Figaro versus Chacon on FS1. I know Victor Crocado of the All About Life podcast might have been interested in doing that one. So we'll see. You're definitely getting Sergey Kovalev versus Anthony Yarde, though. And we'll see what other boxing coverage we can fit into that day. Myself, Alexis Haina, and Ronnie Adams will be doing an exclusive Patreon show. The Screaming Boy podcast. We'll be talking about D23. And then Jesse... We got a week. We got another toss salad and scrambled eggs week coming up here to close out the end of August. We've got DC First Superman Lobo. We've got Krypton Season 2. We've got Rage of Light Imploder. I will also be on another podcast. I'll tell you more about that when it happens. We'll be doing a double shot. God damn it. We'll be doing a double shot. Like if I touch my mouse a certain way, it just goes steaming through steaming Eddie Beeman through the calendar.
His name has now become a verb. Great.
So you'll be getting a special horror edition of Damn You Hollywood with Jason Teasley, Robert Winfrey, and Alexis Haina. They'll be doing Ready or Not. That same day, myself and Alexis Haina will be reviewing the sci-fi original movie that looks an awful lot like Five Nights at Freddy's, but apparently isn't. The Banana Splits. You gonna watch that one, Jesse? You gonna watch it with your kids?
I doubt it. I'll probably wait for you guys to review it, and then when you guys tell me that it wasn't as scary as you guys thought it was, then I'll let the kids watch it.
I told my son about it. He wants to watch it. My wife was like, "He's fucking 5, no." And I had to agree with her. Five seems a bit young to see people running around in large Mickey Mouse costumes stabbing people.
I had issues with Swamp Thing and my kid being in the same room, so yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, another sci-fi movie review. Myself, Jason Teasley, maybe Alexis, maybe not. We'll be reviewing Zombie Tidal Wave. I'm going to wake up at O-Dark early in the morning and do UFC coverage with Robert Winfrey for Andrade versus Zhang. And we've had a change in the schedule. There's a lot of wrestling on August 31st, but we're not going to get to it until September 2nd. We'll do Hannibal in the afternoon with Robert Winfrey, Season 3. And then that night, myself and Chris Bailey and possibly Pat Mullen will review New Japan Pro Wrestling London Quest, NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff, and AEW All Out. That same week, we'll be starting Onslaught. 4 weeks of Onslaught, Jesse. So Onslaught Volume 1 on September 2nd. That's Labor Day. We've got a double shot of source material. We got X-Men Legacy Volume 2 in Invasive Exotics. And we're doing that because the next day, we'll be reviewing the last season of Legion on FX. I'm taking Friday off because, goddamn, pal, it's a lot of podcasts. And then we're right back
Put this network over.
Yeah. And then I'm throwing my wife on her ass right out of the house. I'm saying, I'm get out,
Toodles.
Yeah, oh, Toodles, take a hike. And while she's gone, the mice will play UFC 242. Myself and Robert Winfrey will be doing coverage of Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Dustin Poirier. And we'll talk about the September shows a little next week. So, Jesse.
Yeah.
Tell people
Ready?
What you're doing and tell them about the Superblog team-up, goddammit.
That's right. Super Blog Team Up, ladies and gentlemen. We are teaming with our good buddy Chris Bailey, who's brought out the hordes of podcasters and bloggers to do the Super Blog Team Up and focus on the topic of Immortal. And
I am immortal.
Oh, that's a good one. That is a good one. My cousin, who I told you became a big Clutch fan, got on there and recited some lyrics today from, I can't remember which one it was. But what ended up happening was, I go back into my memories, and 8 years ago, I wrote the lyrics that came before what he wrote today. How crazy is that? That's insane.
That's wild.
That is insane. But so we're checking out our contribution. You check out our contribution. We've already done it. Our contribution to Immortal is Vampirella. That's right, Vampirella.
Whoa, Vampirella.
That's right. Roses for the Dead. 4-issue series where me and Mark got to talk about Vampirella and her tag teaming with Evilly. So check that out. That should be airing there on the 28th. And Mark, did you already pitch or did you already plug Jupiter Ascending?
No, that's your job now.
All right, Superblog Team Up, Radulich in broadcasting style. That's right. Our contribution for the network is our commentary with David Wright, me, Mark, David Wright, discussed Jupiter Ascending. And ladies and gentlemen, Channing Tatum, he never flew so well in a movie. It was amazing. But yeah, we had a good time talking about that. So check that out. That's all happening on the 28th of August. We do have Unspoken Issues. Our podcast ties in with The Unspoken Decade, that great 90s comics website out there. Our most recent episode that will be debuting tomorrow will be our talk about Magnus Robot Fighter #1. So if you're into 90s comics, you like Valiant comics, Magnus Robot Fighter, this will be a fun one to check out. Talked about a lot of fun things on there. And if you go to the Unspoken Decade Facebook page, you can check out a poll over there where we are currently trying to figure out what we're going to talk about next. That's right. Those who like the Facebook page can vote on said poll. I don't even think you have to like the Facebook page. You just got to vote. Pick a comic. There's 2 comics up there. We're doing this go round will be our discussion on a DC Marvel crossover. There's Superman Fantastic Four, and then the other one is Batman Spider-Man. So you got to pick which one you want us to talk about. Right now, Batman Spider-Man is winning like 62% over whatever's left.
Yeah, I voted for Superman Fantastic Four, and then I saw how much no one wants to read that comic.
I don't understand. I took that one too. And I think it's written by a pretty prominent writer, if I remember right. But anyway.
Because everything has to be Batman. Whoa, yes. Fucking Batman.
So other than that, hey, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a Patreon. I believe you need to check out the Patreon for the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We got some great shows there in the Patreon. It's a custom donation. You can donate $1 per month if you wanted and get access to all that great content that's right there for you. So, hey, I think that's about it. Upcoming stuff, they're going to be going on the Patreon too, so don't miss a beat. Make sure to go ahead and set up your Patreon subscription, I guess. Become a patron, and then you'll get access to all that great content that you won't normally otherwise have access to. I'm ready to get out of here, Mark. Let's do it, buddy.
All right, we appreciate you listening to our discussion tonight of DC Universe's Swamp Thing. Check out our Patreon page because we need money. Be well, be safe, and behave.